Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
And this is Sticky Media Productions, bringing you a series review. And so, Marvel is really hammering home with these Disney Plus Marvel Cinematic Universe shows.
Now, of course, this is not their first outing on, trying to do a series for television or streaming services or however you want to take it. You had their first outing with the Defender series,
Like the characters in that.
The characters of that. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and of course Iron Fist. Now, for the vast majority, they were great. But then they did have their stinkers there too. Really looking at Iron Fist and actually later on series and the other ones too. But this new group of series that they're trying to push out are really where their focus is lying. First going out with WandaVision, and now of course with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
And with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it very mainly carries on that tone that was established back with the Captain America trilogy.
Very much so.
This is very much more of a serious outing than most of the more or less the Marvel, what Marvel usually puts out there. And there should be no surprise that the series is overwhelmingly more political than the rest of those other movies.
Of course, political in the means because we're dealing with a really political figure in itself, the legacy of Captain America. And of course, this is a series that you might not want to necessarily get into if you have not watched that trilogy series. Of course, that means the first Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Civil War.
And the story where it starts off, it takes place basically a few months after the events of Avengers Endgame. Mm-hmm. Where everybody who was blipped out of existence are coming back. But the thing is, the whole world is trying to struggle of how to deal with this new surges of people who who have not been around for the past 5-year gap.
And of course, we're not just them, but the individuals that was forced to stay behind for those 5 years. Everybody basically trying to find their place and where they are fitting in this point in time. And yet again, Marvel is really asking those hard-hitting questions that I'm actually happy that they're taking up the mantle to do.
Luckily enough, for this Disney Plus series, they have a competent director who directs all 6 episodes of Carly Skarsgård. I hope I pronounced that name right. A female director who's no stranger to television outing, but for her to do essentially a 6-hour-long film, right? It's really accomplished goals.
Very much so. To be honest with you, if it wasn't for the mere fact that this series was coming out, weekly rather than all at once, I could have binge watched this right straight through and just been okay with it. They are long though. These are longer episodes, almost like an hour long, and it's for a few of those episodes you do kind of feel it in some sense, where the storyline, even though I'm engaged and I want to know what's going on next, do tend to overstay its welcome just a little bit more than they necessarily should.
But thankfully, the showrunner by Malcolm Spellman, he's able to still use the duration that he has to flesh out, basically write out a story that really does flesh out themes that are really prevalent with the legacy of Captain America, and a lot of the basically ripped from the headlines news that applies to the MCU, but also with raw reality.
But let's focus mostly on that whole aspect right there. The legacy of Captain America. Of course, if you have seen Endgame, you know what's going on, what happened with that character, and the big shoes that he left to fill by those that he left behind.
And as you know from the end of Endgame, that Captain America, or Steve Rogers, he essentially gave the shield to Anthony Mackie's Falcon, which is also known as Sam Wilson.
This was, of course, a mixed bag in and of itself, considering the things they had to juggle with that character alone and the legacy that he had to live up to. And to be honest with you, it hurt at times because being an individual that's in the same ballpark as he is, I can actually understand those kind of complex questions and concerns that he was having in his mind when considering around that shield. Wow, Anthony Mackie, in my opinion, blew it right out the park with this character, and it's astonishing what he was able to put here.
And like the whole series deals with his struggles on whether or not that he should take up the shield. And of course, with the other side of the title of the show, it also deals with his relationship with Bucky Barnes, aka, or formerly was the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, it's hard.
This is,
Bucky has went through some stuff, and you were on this journey with him. You understand just where he's coming from, and it was no walk in the park for him, and there was no walk in the park going through the series and joining him on this journey.
now, what this series do with its characters is that it really do make it like for especially with the core of the story, really highlight the gray areas of how what each characters are dealing with.
You really do question whether or not individuals are wrong or right. No one in this particular series, maybe some come a little bit closer than the others, but at the same time, you can still understand why they're doing the things they do. Feel as though they are just this mustache twirly bad guy that everybody has to hate or everybody doesn't needs it off the board. They all have complex reasons for why they are doing the things they are doing, and none of it is easy.
No, and going hammer on with the characters, like going back with Sam Wilson, we start to peel back his own past, and especially with him coming back because he was among those who was blipped away, and him coming back to a world that essentially enough lived on a complete life without him, in that short span of time. You can see that. You can really see how the decision why Steve Rogers decided to basically pass on the shield to him, but also how Sam wants to deal with it going forward.
Let's just put the elephant out the room. Sam's character is a black man dealing with a country that unfortunately has not necessarily treated those citizens of the same ethnicity and background as well as they should.
No, and part of the legacy of Steve Rogers, Captain America, is very heavily grabbed to like a good period of time during his iceberg when he was like frozen, where we get to know a very deep-seated secret of the United States government in the form of very deep-cut Marvel reference in the form of Isaiah Bradley, a character who you'll know going throughout the series really fleshes really do helps Sam on his journey, I'll say.
With Isaiah's character, I both appreciate and mourn some of the aspects they really brought up with him. This whole idea of the tragedy of what the government has done with those individuals of black descent that lay down their lives and have given to this country, what this country has taken from them in general. Specifically, a lot of his origin stories that they introduced with dialogue here is appreciated, but I really wish they had actually shown even more of it when given those opportunities.
And so much of the frustration that's going on with the characters and all is basically a good embodiment with the introduction of John Walker, played by Wyatt Russell.
Mm-hmm.
John Walker is a very complicated individual.
Yeah, some says you feel as though he's just that entitled individual that has everything brought to him on the silver platter, and yet at the same time, you can understand why they just decided to choose him. And on paper, John Walker sounds amazing. He's great. He's the kind of guy you probably want to take up the shield. But then when you look at the step back and you realize what's really being presented to you, you understand that Star Spangled Banner actually has tarnish marks and dents and crevices that are a lot darker and deeper than they necessarily showed up on paper.
And the presence of John Walker essentially goes wrong with that gray zone that the series is trying to flesh out. And one of the other darker sides of that gray is in the form of the reintroduction of Baron Zemo, played by Daniel Bruhl.
I absolutely love this actor, and I love what he has done with the character of Zemo. Because Zemo basically represents the whole concept of the dangers of believing in charismatic heroes, and how that nihilism or blindness can necessarily go around and destroy countries and people in and of themselves.
You've been spitting some hard truths, and the it goes to show that it's never like it's not always good to kill off your villains, especially when the benefits of having a recurring antagonist can help flesh out the heroes and basically help them learn along their journey. One of the other sides of that darker spectrum is basically in the form of Sharon Carter, who we don't want to spend too much on her character because there's a lot of changes that happen after the events of Civil War. But on the spectrum of the many of these fleshed out characters, one of the downsides of this is mainly the overarching threat that this series has is in the form of Carly Morgenthau, who is a leader of this new group of characters called the Flag Smashers.
Now, originally these characters, I was interested to see where they was going to go in and of themselves, because they in this particular series are a new variation of a long-standing Marvel villain brought to the papers of one particular individual in and of itself. The Flag Smashers were really essentially just one character in and of itself, but they decided to break it apart and turn it into a group.
And this group is very reflective on modern day quote-unquote terrorists that we still basically see around the news.
But of course, it is pointed out more truthfully as not necessarily terrorism, but more of extremist groups.
Yes. But the character of Carly, who is this leader, they do their best to have the audience understand where she's coming from and the most she's still doing. But the show really doesn't really do her much favors, where they basically visually showcase her basically going to those very, very hard extremes.
And not necessarily being remorseful or necessarily repentant of going down those dark extremes.
But the show does, over the course of the 6-episode series, the production is what basically benefits. It basically holds its own with trying to still flesh it out.
Yeah, this is actually some Marvel at when its finest when it comes to those, especially the choreography, the special effects, especially with Falcon. This is probably the best I've ever seen this character, and now when he was first introduced, I didn't necessarily see too much of appeal for him, but at the same time, seeing how he grew throughout the movies and even more further in this particular show.
Yes, the VFX does a really great job of showcasing basically all his capabilities, his maneuverability with his wings, the Red Wing robot sidekick that he has. Just as well as Winter Soldier finally showcased what the shield can do, we finally see what
those Falcon wings can do.
Now, as much as the series wants to highlight the Falcon and his capabilities, it's quite unfortunate that Bucky doesn't really have any standout moments as far as action is concerned.
Yeah.
But with the downside of Bucky's being shown as the far cry of what he was when he was reintroduced, John Walker's character, he does some heavy lifting as well. In fact, going to the visual spectacle of all, Captain Winter Soldier showcases some of the most potent imagery that is going to be very remembered from here and for future outings. Welcome return to doing the music is Henry Jackman from his done work from Civil War and Winter Soldier, basically coming back with Falcon's theme and Winter Soldier's theme. But his use of also a good R&B soundtrack also helps and give me some unique variety in the sound.
But when you stripping it down, understanding where you were going out with certain storylines and certain character developments, I feel as though there are a few things that definitely holds it back, going back on the idea that certain episodes lingered on a little farther than necessarily they should have, and then there was just a little bit too much talk in certain areas where they could have officially fleshed out and shown a little bit more. Specifically, of course, with Isaiah's character and a few others. But those things aren't enough to completely lower it too far. It just takes it away from where it could have been, where this show also could obviously have been an amazing or epic series. It has just fallen itself towards just being a great series.
But there we have it. That was our review for The Falcon, the Winter Soldier.
Guys, as always, if you like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Please hit that little bell down there for notifications and more content we bring to you. Did you see this series? If not, when are you? And if you have, please let us know. How did you feel? Are you even more energized to see what else Marvel has to offer?
But there, until then, Loki's next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Loki's next in Disney Plus outings. So, again, Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
This has been Seeking Me Productions.
See you guys later.